Any additions to the agenda? If not, could we have a motion to approve the agenda? All in favor? Thank you. Contrary, nay. You have the minutes from February 24th for regular and in camera, and March 9th committee of the whole and in camera. With any errors or omissions, would somebody move the acceptance of those minutes? Go ahead, Rick.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'll move the approval of the February 24th regular council meeting, February 24th in camera meeting, March 9th committee of the whole meeting, and the March 9th in camera meeting.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Contrary, nay. Thank you. Motion carried. Moving on to, I have no remarks, so we'll move on to 5.1, public hearing, private road maintenance and improvement bylaw, P-088-14.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Obviously, there's no one here to speak on that behalf. My first question to staff would be, do we have any letters of concern? With that said, and I've been the councillor that's been pushing to possibly have a private road maintenance and improvement bylaw. I think that there's still some problems with this bylaw. There's been a lot of discussion around the table and outside of a council meeting on possible problems that there may be with it, and even though it costs us a little bit of money to advertise the public meeting in the papers and stuff, I think that it's prudent that council possibly go over this again at a future date. So I'm going to make a motion that we table this private maintenance and improvement bylaw P-088-14 for future consideration. That's my motion.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
This is an important bylaw, in my opinion, and I was the original councillor that brought this forward to possibly help the residents. I'm certainly not, as long as I'm a councillor, going to let this go, but I think it's prudent that we do our due diligence and try to get this right the first time. I don't want to pass a bylaw that is flawed. And there's been some concerns brought up to again by our municipal solicitor, and I don't think in the bylaw committee that we did it do justice. And I also think the next time that we discuss this in a bylaw meeting, that we have make arrangements to have our solicitor present while we discuss this. I think that's only right, because like I said before, I don't think we should pass a bylaw that's flawed, and there is many flaws that were just mentioned to me here before we had the public hearing on this. So that's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, nay. Thank you. Motion carried. Moving on to number 6 on the agenda, recommendations from Committee of the Whole. 6.1, a recommendation from the March 9th Committee of the Whole meeting, COAC recommendation.
Right. Where is the authority to grant exploratory oil and gas lease sites on the Scotian Shelf rests jointly with the provincial and federal governments? I'll move that the Municipality of the District of Yarmouth write to the Canada-Nova Scotia Offshore Petroleum Board, the MLA for Yarmouth, and the MP for West Nova to indicate that any decision taken concerning oil and gas exploration leases on the Scotian Shelf take into consideration the report to municipal councillors titled Rationale for the Permanent Removal of Sites 3 and 4 from any future Canada-Nova Scotia Offshore Petroleum Board oil and gas exploratory lease site options is prepared by John Davis, Director, Clean Ocean Action Committee. Additionally, the MODI believes all community groups should be heard from in any approval process related to any such oil and gas exploration lease process.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that? Moved and seconded. Any further discussion, councillors? Go ahead.
I have one quick comment. Are we also going to, I don't know if this would include in changing the motion, but did we also include Mr. Berry's organization that made a presentation to us? Was that included in the motion as well? I don't remember hearing that. I may have fallen asleep while you said that, but just want to make sure that the letter is being sent to the organization that made a presentation to us.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Just making sure of that. A carbon copy, correct?
Yep. Councillor Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. From the committee of the whole meeting, when Mr. Berry was in, the COAC, the Clean Oceans Action Committee, when they were in and made the presentation to this council, I was here and I wholeheartedly heard him, and I thought this municipal unit was fully prepared to do what he had asked. But in the interim between that and this meeting, we had this other information come forward that Councillor Cunningham has just kind of read off in a motion form and so on. I don't want them to think that this municipal unit was backing away from or anything else from his presentation, but somewhere between his presentation and the email that we received, there's quite a difference in the information. Was there not? He was saying that sites 3 and 4 were going to be up for lease in April. That's what he told us, did he not? And it was only, what, a few days or whatever after that, we received information from the Offshore Petroleum that they were never on the list to begin with. My concern, and I support your motion, Councillor, but my concern was there was a big difference in the information from what he was giving us and what we got in the email, and I don't understand how they did not have that information. Not that it pertains to this motion, but we were prepared to move. If it hadn't been a committee of the whole, we would have passed a motion to support him, when in reality it wasn't even on the books. And I really feel slighted that this municipal unit was led that way. Because would I be wrong in saying, were we not prepared to support? We really were. We would have been the fools. I'm sorry to say that. I'm glad the information was forthcoming and so on. So I gotta fully support what Councillor Cunningham is asking in his motion. That's all I want to say.
Any further discussion? Okay, go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, just to clarify, and it's pretty clear in the motion. I mean, this is supportive of the Canada Nova Scotia Offshore Petroleum Board taking into full consideration the findings in the report, and they'll weigh and measure that in the overall process. So I think it's a positive, supportive motion for our fishery. So that's what I'll say.
Any further discussion? Question being called. All in favor say aye. Aye. Contrary, nay. Motion carried. 6.1.2 South Ohio parking lot. You have a letter there in your information. What's the wishes of council on that?
Mr. Chair, if I can just remind council, there was the request had been submitted by the Community Association to have access to the parking lot adjacent to the little community park for development for parking purposes. So I think at the Committee of the Whole, there was an agreement that that could be done with conditions, and so a letter has been drafted to that community group outlining our agreement to deed the property to them with certain conditions. And I think that was just a requirement to have a motion of council to carry forward with that agreement.
So move that motion.
Any further discussion from council? Okay, Leland, you had your mic on.
One
Go
piece,
ahead.
okay, the first request was for the piece of land, but in the letter that we received from, I guess he's the president or whatever, Charles Winship, is asking if this piece of land will now be non-taxable. Would it be?
That is indeed a separate second matter that you'll need to address, and it hasn't been addressed prior to now.
Then all we're passing here this evening is nothing to do with the tax. It's just to grant him that piece of property
That's my
with
understanding.
those conditions.
Yes.
Nothing to do, so this one little item here is still going to have to be discussed by this council.
Yes,
I just
and that'll
wanted-
be, that's explicit in the draft letter.
Okay, I just wanted that clarity. Thank you.
And just to clarify that, Councillor Leland, they have just talked to some parks or found out that the provincial parks or federal parks are usually exempt from, and that's the only reason they got there. They just.
Any further discussion from council? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Contrary, nay. Thank you, motion carried.
If I may, Warden, I think it's my understanding that if you do want to deal with the tax exemption request, you can do it now. Or you have the alternative just to table it till a later date. It's up to you.
I move that we table the tax exemption until a later date.
Any further discussion? Question? All in favor, say aye. Contrary, nay. Thank you. This is an opportunity. Any councillors have any events in their community that they want to go public? Councillor Condem?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First and foremost, I'm very glad that I have the opportunity to announce some upcoming events, at least in my district, and none of you should feel bad because there is a lot that goes on in my district. It doesn't cover twice almost as much mass as the rest of you combined, so just because I have a couple events here is just something that I wanted to put on there. One event that's happening on April 9th of this year at the North Kemptville Fire Hall, an ATV rally is going to be held in support of the men's softball team, which is going to the softball nationals in Niagara Falls. This is not something that's been held in previous years around this whole area, ATV rallies. This will be happening on April 9th, 2016. It's going to be starting, or registration is going to be starting at 8:30 to 10. The distance is approximately 90 kilometers, and it's going to be side-by-side friendly because there's a lot of newer ATVs out there that are side-by-sides rather than the conventional ATV. And it will actually be heading up towards the New France area. So that's going to be quite a nice trip. Also, on April the 30th of next month, the Forest Glen Canoe Fun Run is going to be happening once again. That's an event that I've attended since 1988. It's no longer a formal event per se. It's just more or less a community get-together. And last year, unfortunately, there was only 8 canoes that went down there because of the extremely high water conditions. But there was also a lot of ATVs that attended this canoe fun run. Also, again, this year there's going to be ticket sales on a canoe giveaway, which is a fundraiser for the Forest Glen Community Center. Tickets for that can be bought at Canadian Tire during the weekends, or they can be bought at local corner stores throughout the Tri-Counties. Also, I ain't going to be able to get to announce this on at the next regular council meeting, but I think it's important that I should put there. The Carleton Fire Hall will be having a breakfast on Mother's Day on May the 15th. That's going to be coming up in my area. So those are some of the events that I know of, and I apologize to anyone that may be watching the recording of this that I may not have everyone's events, but I'm more than happy to put them on this agenda item. And if anyone needs to get a hold of me, please contact me through the municipal office through our either by email or phone number. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Moving on to new business, 7.1 February Development Report. You all had a chance to look through that. Someone want to move the acceptance of it? If there's no questions, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, also at this time, also move the recommendations or the report from the development.
Thank you, Councillor. We have a seconder for that. Here, no further discussion. All in favor, say aye. Contrary, nay. Thank you. 7.2 is a recommendation from the Planning Advisory Committee, a request from Eric Sonia to rezone from rural development to rural, anyway, from RD to RC. I think it's 2 RD from, isn't it? But anyway. Yeah. Yeah, right, sorry. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is from the Planning Advisory Committee. I move that council move to first reading the rezone the portion of property of Eric Sonier, PID number 902-30186 Mood Road, from rural development to rural commercial for the development and operation of a retail fish market and corner store.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
since my mic is still on, all this is going to be the first approval, and I believe that the Planning Advisory Committee staff has the advertisements and stuff to go in the paper for a public hearing on this. And I do believe the date that is going to be set for that is going to be during our next regular council meeting in April, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Thank you. Any further discussion? Question being called. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Contrary, nay. Thank you. Motion carried. 7.3, request for tax adjustment due to fire.
We have it up, but I'm trying to pull it up.
There's no. Yeah, there's nothing there to pull. In any event, I'll make the motion that we there was some confidential information there, so that we do indeed provide tax adjustment due to file is discussed.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair. I do have the assessment number, if that would be good for the assessment number 336-2361. That's what I have.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion? Question being called. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, nay. Thank you. Motion carried. The 7.4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are requests for grants. Do we want to move those to budget? Are they time sensitive?
There's one there that is time sensitive.
Which one?
That was the
Okay, yes.
Sports Heritage.
So with the exception of 7.4.6, would someone move all the budget and then we'll deal with that one?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that's all you want. Any further discussion?
Question.
I think the motion would specify all except, okay. All right,
On the motion.
all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, nay. Thank you. Motion carried. We would now deal with 7.4.6.
Let me get here open. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we grant the Yarmouth Town and Country Sports Heritage Association a grant in the amount of $800 for the upcoming grant budget allocations for the year 2016-2017.
Further discussion? Question being called, all in favor, say aye. Contrary, nay. Thank you. Motion carried. 7.5, Article Electric Car, Councillor Cunningham.
In any event, I just thought I'd put that on the agenda. When you pull it up, just waiting for it to come up here. In any event, from memory, they're proposing to have a series of charging units. Quebec and Maine are working on this jointly. And again, it may be something, an article we want to forward to the Nova Scotia Department of Transportation, because we do have an international ferry here, and I think the expectation, you know, is it's becoming more of an expectation that folks have regular the ability to charge electric cars, and so in any event, I'd move that we forward the article to the Department of Transportation for their information. It's my motion.
Do we have a seconder for that? Moved and seconded. Any further discussion, council? Question being called, all in favor say aye. Contrary, nay. Motion carried. Thank you. 7.6 is a letter from the Yarmouth County Trail Development Association, re ATV access along Water Street.
Yes, Mr. Chair. As you all know, I enjoy ATVs very much. I just purchased a new side-by-side, and I just said to my wife the other day, I said, boy, wouldn't it be nice to be able to travel from my area out in the Carleton area all the way through the town and go out through the Melbourne, Tuscot area. This has always been a bone of contention, and it's been a bone of contention with the ATV Association for years and years. So what they're requesting here, and I'm going to make this a motion, that the municipality of Yarmouth write a letter to the town of Yarmouth and request that they seek permission from the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal from the province of Nova Scotia to allow access along Water Street for the joining of the two trails. And I make that a motion.
Okay, moved and seconded. Floor is open for discussion.
One more thing that I forgot to put in this motion, and I request from the seconder that we add this, that we also carbon copy Mr. Ronday, the president of the ATV Association, in this letter, so he can present it to council.
Okay. Leland?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of issues on this. I know this has been brought before UNSM. I believe there was a resolution passed or a resolution looked at. My memory's not that good. At UNSM fall conference, and I can't remember what happened because there is some issues there. My first bone of contention is the town of Yarmouth owns, maintains, looks after their roads, their highways. I don't know why that TIR has to be involved in the request whatsoever to be able to take ATVs down their street or down their sidewalk, which TIR does not give them one nickel to maintain. So that is a bone of contention. I don't know why it has to go through TIR to allow that. My second thought is I've spoken with some ATVers from up in your area, John, and right now they can go from, I'll say from the Carleton or Brazil Lake area, they can go all the way into Digby they have to go through Weymouth. What I don't understand is there is a trail, part of the trail, they have to come off and go through the town and up the hill, and just after you go up the brow of the hill, you get back onto the track. Am I right? That's the way I understood it. And then they can carry on and go to Digby. And they do that. And this is what they tell me. We go to Digby for a reason, because it is a drive. We stop and buy gas. We stop and we eat at the restaurant, usually the Urban, they tell me, or McDonald's, and so on, and they make it an outing. We'd like to do that through the town of Yarmouth, be able to go down Water Street, go down the number 3, the old way, and so on. Probably when we come back, we would stop at either Rutter's, Tim Hortons. We'd spend money in the town. They don't understand why there's still a big contentious issue there. But what I don't understand is when these people went through Weymouth, they were followed by an RCMP car. They were very nervous, thought, hey, we're going to get nailed. Anyway, the police car passed them and went into the grocery store there on top of the hill. And they thought, well, we'll go in and check, make sure. So they went and asked the officer, you know, is this all right to do this? He said, are you acting reckless? No. Are you doing it proper? Yes. Help yourself. Go ahead. Which they did. The following week, same thing, Natural Resources was behind them. A $435 fine down the same road. It is enforced by Natural Resources. You're not allowed to take your ATV on the road. I'm not an ATVer. I think that's terrible. I thought that was the connection point between, and Natural Resources gave that couple a ticket for $435. And the week before, the RCMP officer said, no, go ahead. You're not acting reckless. You're doing everything by the law. You're registered. You're insured. He had to show him the papers. You're registered. You're insured. Go ahead. Natural Resources comes along. Tickets them. That's terrible. That's terrible. I hope this letter that we send will help the town do this, because it is an eco-tourism thing. And we as councillors sit here want to do eco-tourism, and we have a roadblock, as per se, right in that whole area. They want to come, they want to go down short. All the ATVers want to do it. They do it everywhere else, Cape Breton and so on. Boy, here in Southwest Nova, we have a different attitude sometimes. But hopefully this will work. That's my rant, Mr. Warden. Thank you.
I think one of the problems with that may be the Off-Highway Vehicles Act, which governs obviously ATVs and whatnot, and makes it illegal to have ATVs or any of that nature on public highways and public roads. And it's there's some very limited exceptions in that act when an actual ATV can be on a public highway or a public road, like crossing a highway. You get from, one trail, like for example, when you're on the tracks and you're crossing a road to get to the other track or whatever, there's limited exceptions that you can do that. So, I mean, there may be a problem with the town even say, okay, yeah, you can use our roads, but it may still be a contravention of the Off-Highway Vehicles Act, which is obviously a provincial statute. I'm not certain. I mean, I don't know the whole Off-Highway Vehicles Act, but there may be some problems in relation to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's also one other thing to note too. If we all may remember the news and where I think this may be coming from, we also heard in Newfoundland that they're changing the ATV Act, the Off-Road Highways Act. And in that way, where this may be stemming from, because there seems to be a move, at least in that province, to get that act changed so the ATVs can actually go down the shoulder of the road without fear of being ticketed, provided they are registered and insured, which all ATVs have to be anyway to operate on the ATV tracks. So unless you own your own farm and you have it registered under farm and you don't take it off your own property, then you don't have to register for it. You still have to register it, but you don't have to register for the $50+ fee it is. I believe it's only $11.45, I think it is. But there's a lot of changes, and I do know that the provincial government in Newfoundland are looking at, not necessarily going to, but they're looking at possibly making those changes. And in all honesty, I think that would be a good thing. In some areas, like Councillor Anthony said, it would get a lot of them off the road being reckless. They ain't speeding down the road because they're going to be doing something wrong. At least I think they'd be more respectful I think it'd be nice to see, because there's a lot of them actually, whether it's illegal or not, that actually do travel up and down the dirt roads in my district. A lot of them. They do it to go from the Perry Road to the store to get gas and then go up through the Gold Mine Road. Obviously, they have to drive on the pavement. It's not just a 100-foot drive down the pavement. It's almost a third of a kilometer to get from the Perry Road, which is a provincial road, which they have to drive down about 7 or 8 kilometers. So, and that's typical. And they don't want to break the law, but and I have to say that I've done it myself several times. So I'm no better, but I guess you ain't breaking the law unless you're caught. So I've been told. So anyway, thank you.
Any further discussion?
If I could just
Okay.
say something, to the points that are made, I think generally it's probably something we'd all be interested in having see happen and occur in the area because of the outdoor recreation and the tourism and all the spin-off it brings into things like that. But I think maybe there probably are some issues that we might not be considering fully before we go down that road, and a lot of them are probably safety related. I've took the liberty of discussing this a little bit with the town staff sergeant just this week when I ran into him by accident on the street. And there are probably some legitimate enforcement and policing and safety issues there, particularly with regards to Water Street and the congestion that it sees in the summertime and just the physical proximity of the area. And there may be, again, also a variety of acts and regulations that we're not familiar with either that could pose some issues. Maybe a more thoughtful approach would be to try to convene a group of the interested stakeholders to sit down and to see how we could make it a more positive project for the area with the town and with the RCMP and whatever other authorities are involved to try to find a good solution that could make it work. I personally would like to see it happen too, but I don't know if Water Street is the best location, and there might be some other avenues in the town that could be used. I don't know, but it's just a cold letter to the town is probably not going to get as positive a reaction as maybe a suggestion that we'd like to see a committee convened that could work on this with the ATVers and the other authorities to see how we can make it happen.
So you have a motion on the floor. Do you want to let it stand or do you want to amend it?
Well, I just wanted to comment to that. I think we should let this motion stand, but I think that maybe we should be making a motion to Ron Day to come make a presentation to council at a future date to talk about those issues as well. That maybe we're going about it the wrong way, but also in this letter that they said that they were going to be speaking with the town of Yarmouth, making a presentation to them. So I think that maybe we should support them, but they may or may not get nowhere. And I actually hope to attend the meeting when they make the presentation there. And maybe we should do on a subsequent motion that we maybe write the ATV Association, Ron Day, the president of the ATV Association, to have a discussion with him, or a presentation and then a discussion in that regards to the stuff that Mr. Shea had brought up to us. But I believe this motion should stand as it currently sits.
Any further discussion? Okay, you have a motion. It's been seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Contrary, nay. Thank you. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'd also like to make another motion in this subject that we write a letter to Mr. Ron Day, the president of the Nova Scotia Southwest Nova ATV Association, to come in and make a presentation to council in that regard, so we can have a discussion in the issues and possible solutions to the problem that we're having.
Motion for that, or just consensus for staff to send them an open invitation?
Yeah, I guess instruction to them, then I take that motion off the table, Mr. Chair. I guess I'd like to give staff direction to do that.
I guess is that all I would need is a consensus. Any objection from council if staff was to send out an invitation, open invitation at their convenience to come before council?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. 7.7, you have the Municipal Government Act. They've done the review. They have 19 recommendations. We have until June 13th or 30th to respond to that. So I don't know if you've all had a chance to review that. So I guess for tonight it'd be an FYI. And if you have any concerns or this to bring the council, and as a council we can act on them or leave the recommendations as are. Yes.
That is an ongoing item on our old business in our next regular council agenda and continue until the deadline date is passed. There may be some questions that we may have when the CAO arrives
Yeah.
back in that regard, and I'd like his input on a couple of those things that may be written there
I guess
as well.
so. Liz, would you just keep that as on open agenda like you do with the announcements and events or whatever till June? Go ahead.
Chair, perhaps we could also have staff look at that and have I mean, I think each individual councillor should look at that document and take note of the changes, but perhaps have staff review the document and come to council with any things that they think are noteworthy or that would advantage the municipality district of Yarmouth moving forward before the deadline.
Okay. Good. You have your committee reports. You can go through them at your convenience if any of them stand out and you have a question of the representative. If not, we'll keep moving. I don't think we have any committee of the whole recommendations, do we, Liz? We only had the one and it was on the agenda. So, all right. Move to adjourn. Thank you, gentlemen.